Hi guys, it's Laura from How to Get Your Shit Together, and in this video I am talking about the left brain versus right brain debate. Most of us identify as being a little bit more analytical or a little bit more creative, but the problem is that analytical thinkers can sometimes be a little bit too rigid in their thinking, and they can find it very difficult to think outside the box. Whereas creative thinkers sometimes find it tricky to take their head out of the clouds. So how can we hack into the power of both so that we can reap all of the benefits? Stick around. Now, admittedly, the whole left brain versus right brain idea has been debunked. It's not like we only use one side of our brains when we're thinking logically and only the other side when we're creating stuff. But the fact remains that we still use different parts of our brains when we're engaged in different types of tasks. It's also true that a lot of us tend to favor one over the other. So how can analytical thinkers incorporate a little bit more flair into their days? And how can creatives learn to embrace a little more logic? In other words, how can left brainers be a little bit more right? And vice versa. Let's start by looking at which you identify more as and why things may not be so black and white. Now, maybe you don't consider yourself a particularly creative person. I know I didn't until relatively recently, but remember that creativity isn't limited to artistic ability. You don't have to be Michelangelo. In fact, you don't even have to be very good at all. Instead, creativity comes into play anytime you create something. Sometimes it'll be a meal you are throwing together from whatever ingredients are reasonably fresh. And then other times it will be a game that you're making up just to get your kids to cooperate at bedtime. Seriously, mothers are some of the most creative people out there. Right now in my living room, I have a whole farmyard made up of lollipop stick houses and pom-pom animals. Or maybe you are always creating and crafting and you feel like you spend so much time outside of the box that you have just forgotten what the inside looks like. But remember that most daily tasks and chores are actually logical in that there are set steps that you follow to get a certain result. Anything you do as a habit or just on autopilot, anything you do as a habit or on autopilot or where there are step-by-step instructions, they can be considered logical or left brain. So whether you identify as more analytical or more creative, the fact remains that we all incorporate elements of both into our daily lives. Finding balance between the two is important to keep our lives interesting and our minds sharp. How do we do it? The trick is to batch and alternate. Now, there is a whole module dedicated to optimizing your to-do list in my e-course, The Productivity Power-Up. I'll link it below if you want to check out the curriculum and get a free preview of the introductory module, so check out the description box for that. But one of the best ways to optimize your to-do list is to batch your tasks. This means, quite simply, putting similar tasks together. When you're doing the same job for any reasonable period of time, it is much easier for your brain to get in the zone than if you are constantly chopping and changing. It's so much easier to make all of your phone calls in one go than it is to spread them out throughout the entire day. It's more efficient to run all of your errands while you're already out and about than it is to make several trips. It's quicker to write a few paragraphs all in one go than it is to write a sentence here and there. Trust me, I know this. It is easier to wash and chop all of your veg for the entire week than it is to do a small amount every day. Easier, but not more enjoyable. Task switching tires out your brain, so try to do it as little as possible. Stick to one type of task until you need a break. So when you are planning out your day, look for ways that you can batch all of the logical tasks together. And once those are done, make sure that you take a decent break before you launch into the more creative jobs. Now, I know from experience and from doing a lot of research on this topic over the years that there is an optimum time of day to do these tasks. So plan your days accordingly. Generally speaking, you are better off leaving your creative tasks until you are sleepy. It may sound silly, but it's at that point where your analytical brain is starting to slow down that creativity really kicks in. And it allows for that outside the box thinking that logic would otherwise limit. It's also why some of our best ideas come to us while we're in the shower, because we have temporarily tuned out reality so that our subconscious can come rushing in to fill the void. When we are fully awake and alert, as I am not right now, but we are much better prepared to follow things through to their natural conclusion. Our focus and concentration are at peak levels, so it's much easier to follow instructions no matter how complex. We're better at analysing information, patterns and shapes and looking for similarities. Therefore, daytime is usually better for tackling those types of tasks, and creatives should attempt to complete what they would consider mundane work during those hours. When we are tired, on the other hand, our brain starts to make crazy connections from the scattered pieces of our day. That is essentially what I think dreams are. But like a small child, your brain will start to pick up random pieces to see if they fit. And more often than not, there actually will be two pieces that fit together, even if they don't actually go together. But that is what true creativity is. It's the ability to see connections that nobody else does. It's the power to shape sentences that speak volumes. The ability to mix two different mediums to make a work of art. It's that unique insight that just helps to convey a message in a new way. So in essence, I guess tiredness kind of frees the mind to think a little bit more liberally and removes the limitations that alertness and analytical thinking can bring. So right brains should batch all of the routine tasks, put them all together and complete them at the time when they are most awake and alert. And left brains should find a little bit more flair if they look for it later in the day when pieces are randomly put together to see if anything clicks. You may not be left with a perfect picture, but you may find some interesting new patterns all the same. And that is a wrap for yet another week. It's kind of sad that we use a relatively small percentage of our brains, so hopefully this video inspired you to kind of tap into some areas that maybe you previously thought weren't you. Let me know in the comments below whether you consider yourself more of an analytical thinker or a creative type. Personally, I consider myself an analytical thinker. In fact, often an over-analytical thinker. But I am learning to embrace my creative side more and more, and I have to say I am all the happier for it. Check out the links in the description box below because I would love to have you follow me on your social network of choice. I share lots more information over there. And click the lovely red subscribe button if you haven't already and you want to support the channel, and also if you want new videos to be shot straight to your subscriptions list. Next month I will be dealing with the hugely important topic of self-care and how to look after your well-being, particularly if you are an introvert like me. Until then, gur míle maith agaibh agus feiceadh mé sibh go luath. Slán!